thing that Epstein was sexually abusing these massage therapists and these girls. And if they were adults, they were like 18, 19 years old. They were very young women. And so one 18-year-old woman came back and complained, and she said something, and so they're using this as the excuse of like why, it's one of Trump's many excuses for why the friendship broke up. But he was hanging out with Epstein long after this. This was what, 2003, I think.
Hey everyone, Happy New Year, even though we're a bit premature. But instead of resting, I'm trying to find fellow masochists whom I know care and work and are dedicated. And so Ellie Leonard is one of them, the Panicked Writer, her fantastic Substack, which is now skyrocketing. And you have to subscribe so you can tell everyone that you knew her before she was super cool and famous. Ellie has been doing the work. She has if you will, the chops because she was a transcriber. And if anyone has transcribed, and I used to do that a lot when I first started because I used to do long form interviews and I was poor, so I used to transcribe my own interviews so
Mhm.
that I could publish them. It is one of the most thankless, painful, monotonous jobs on earth. So Ellie, though, being the masochist that she is, has used those transcribing skills and the patience garnered from doing that legwork to pour through every single released published Epstein document, which includes reading all of the published email correspondences between Jeffrey
Yep.
Epstein and individuals such as Steve Bannon and others. And on her fantastic website, she gives her analysis and she's broken it down and she's categorized it, right? So JP
Yeah.
Morgan, Steve Bannon, and on and on. And I've been gone for, as you know, for 2 weeks. I just got back last night. It was like a 23-hour flight. Should I rest? Never. And the timing is so exquisite because I reached out to Ellie before the Wall Street Journal late last night published this bombshell. And so voila, the timing is perfect because the question that I have for you, Ellie,
Mhm.
based on this Wall Street Journal article that we'll talk about, did Donald Trump not only rape girls with Jeffrey Epstein, but isn't it likely that he might have also sexually trafficked girls with Jeffrey Epstein?
The people at this point who don't think so, who think that he's somehow innocent or working with the FBI or like this hero in the Oval Office, like that group is shrinking so much, and like people just have to be living in a tiny dark little room. Like it's got to be very uncomfortable if you're still sticking up for Donald Trump and trying to say everything's a lie and everything's just coincidence. As we read these files, we realize what a vast network of people were involved in all of this on many different levels. Like if you were not raping girls, you knew about it and you laughed
Mm,
at it and it was a joke and it was a rumor and it was like, you brushed that aside because there was business involved or there was narcissism involved or there was cronyism involved. And so everybody is accountable, and it's you're really hard pressed to find people above a certain pay grade who didn't know that this was going on at that time. And Donald Trump was one of the centralized figures in that.
so can you tell us the latest that happened last night? It's the Wall Street Journal,
Yeah.
and I'll give the headline: the incident that prompted Trump to ban Epstein from Mar-a-Lago spa. Mar-a-Lago sent an 18-year-old spa worker on a house call to Jeffrey Epstein in 2003. She complained to her bosses that Epstein pressured her for sex. This came out at 9 p.m. last night, December 30th. Wall Street Journal, that flaming leftist progressive rag run by Muslim socialists.
So this came out, and it's really funny because like if you because you're on all the socials, like you see MAGA going nuts about this just reading the title, saying that it like validates their argument because they didn't actually read the article. The article states that Mar-a-Lago was sending employees, massage therapists, at whatever age you want to consider those, girls and women, to Jeffrey Epstein's house for house calls because he was such a high level client, if not member, because he wasn't technically a member of Mar-a-Lago. So he was very high level. He was obviously very close with Trump. And so instead of coming to Mar-a-Lago to get his massages like the rest of the world would come to the spa there, they would send their massage people to his house for house calls. They were aware at that time, they were aware of his reputation. They were aware, all people, not just Donald Trump, but a lot of people at Mar-a-Lago were very aware of Jeffrey Epstein's reputation. They said often in this article, he sometimes likes to expose himself, like, don't worry about it, just, laugh it off, whatever. And then Trump's wife at the time, Marla Maples, was warning people because she knew what was going on, and she didn't want people going over there. So it was a very well-known thing that Epstein was sexually abusing these massage therapists and these girls. And if they were adults, they were like 18, 19 years old. They were very young women. And so one 18-year-old woman came back and complained, and she said something. And so they're using this as the excuse of like why, it's one of Trump's many excuses for why the friendship broke up. But he was hanging out with Epstein long after this. This was what, 2003, I think, that this happened. And he was still buying, competing to buy houses with him well after that. And I believe the article where he, said glowing praises about Epstein was after this as well. So it's very telling that this was going on, that this was known, and whatever level you believe Donald Trump was involved in this is something that you can't deny, that he knew about it and that he knew that was going on.
And we just found out, this is from an hour ago, New York Times, the Justice Department is now the Trump Justice Department has roughly 5.2 million pages of Epstein Files documents
Oh my
still to be
God.
reviewed and released to the public. Oh, sorry, Ellie, you'll be busy till 2030. All documents were supposed to be released on December 19th.
Yeah.
The department is in violation of the law Trump himself signed. The Justice Department has 5.2 million pages of Epstein Files still to be reviewed and released to the public, which means that the DOJ is in violation of the law Trump himself signed. And also, what do you think is in 5.2 million pages? First question. Well, first question. Why didn't they release the 5.2 million pages, even though every single congressperson except Clay Higgins voted to set the deadline of December 19th, which has gone by? So why didn't they release all of it? And number two, what do you think is in those 5.2 million pages?
I think it's a whole lot of emails. My fingers are crossed. That's all I want to see is emails, because these emails, I mean, in that first batch that we got with the Bannon emails, it wasn't a very big batch. It was, I don't know how many, couple thousand pages, but like we got so much information from that interaction that we didn't know about. There were things we assumed, but we didn't have those receipts. And if you give us 5 million pages of unredacted court documents and depositions and emails and photographs and video footage, there's really no hiding anything. Like I assume that even people who aren't quite sure if they broke the law or not are probably pretty scared right now and talking to their lawyers. Because I mean, even just I've gone through the first 2 folders of this last batch, which has 11 folders. It has 30,000 files. So I've gone through about 8,000 files, let's say. Even in there are emails from a guy named Mr. Invisible. And if you read through these emails, Mr. Invisible is writing to Ghislaine Maxwell, and you start to hear, Mr. Invisible's valet just died. Okay, let's see whose valet died on this date. Oh, Mr. Invisible is going to Peru in March of 2002. Who was going to Peru? Oh, Mr. Invisible is Prince Andrew. And so all of a sudden you have this, just a little batch of emails. But in those emails, Ghislaine Maxwell is saying, oh, are you going sightseeing? Oh, are you going to go see the 2-legged type? Oh, do you want something appropriate or inappropriate? Like all of a sudden we have these things that were never meant to see the light of day, that it's going to be a spectrum. It's going to be a spectrum from being completely criminal to being really, really embarrassing. And we're going to get everything. And I don't think anybody wants to be involved with that. And I don't think I mean, I don't know what you can hide if there are 5 million files, depending on what's redacted. But even with the redactions, I mean, people are smart. There are some very smart investigators working on this side of the line, and people have figured out how to unredact these documents. People have figured out how to decode them. And I think you have smarter people in the American public than you do working for the DOJ.
And there's so much to unpack with what you
Yeah.
just said. Um, let's talk about redaction because
Mhm.
it's the one of the last things that you said. And the timeline, since it's so fast and furious, it's only been 2 weeks. The DOJ on Friday was supposed to dump it. They delayed it. Then late in the afternoon, they dumped thousands of files. In these files, we found out there were a lot of email correspondences, right? Which were already, that was from the Epstein estate, not the government. Because there's a couple of leaks here, folks. The Epstein estate is not the same thing as what the government has. That is Jeffrey Epstein's estate, and his brother has long said that he doesn't believe that Jeffrey committed suicide. So
Right.
the Epstein estate has already given a huge tranche of documents to the Democrats, and they're doing drip, drip, drip. Then you have the survivors themselves, who are gaining, if you will, more courage, more allies, and are holding the feet of Congress to the fire and are saying that if you don't release information, we're going to come out and speak. And every week, there's a new survivor that comes out either anonymously or they name themselves, such as what New York Times published, I think it was a week and a half ago, where they spoke to 20 former employees, assistants, and even a survivor, a beauty pageant, a former beauty pageant whose name I'm forgetting, who has come out and said, "Yeah, Donald Trump, was very lewd." Did she accuse Trump of assaulting her or of chasing her? Uh,
I don't know. I haven't read that one. I will be honest. I'm just like entrenched in these files, so I'm
no,
trying to
no,
like
no.
catch up with the
So,
articles.
so you got survivors as one. You got the Epstein estate.
Yes.
The third, the leak they can plug is Glenn Maxwell, which I
Yes.
think is still a huge scandal because nobody has asked. Well, they asked Todd Blanche this when he came on Kristen Welker's Meet the Press, but he didn't give a satisfactory answer as to why Glenn Maxwell got a sweetheart deal and transferred to a
Mhm.
minimum security camp where she has yoga and a dog and all this information, and why that happened after she met Todd Blanche. Less than a week later, she goes there, and oh yeah, a Wall Street Journal reported about this book that she had compiled, and then Donald Trump had sent a message and a lewd drawing, and
Yep.
Donald Trump said, you're lying, I'm going to sue you," and voila, somehow, Ellie, we got the book, the drawing. Where did that
Mhm.
come from? I would
The
guess
estate.
yeah, yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell. So you got three
Right.
leaks, and then Lev is asking, "Hey, Lev." Lev is asking why she's still there. Exactly. So,
Right.
and then the fourth leak I would say is, and I'm going to talk to Allison Gill at 2 p.m. That the FBI, instead of trying to talk to the survivors, instead of meeting with them, instead of uncovering the depths of this Epstein trail and what it leads to, they've been tasked by the DOJ to sequester themselves and work overtime to find Donald Trump's name and scrub it,
Right.
but they were all working from the same Excel sheet, which was not secure.
Yeah.
And so Allison has essentially told us that some of these people have reached out to her, whistleblowers. So you got four leaks that you can't plug. And Ali, I want to ask you, with the in the last 2 weeks, with what they have released and since backtracked, tell us about the stuff that they whoopsie forgot to redact, and who does that entail?
So, I have heard, I mean, it was so funny. I was talking the other night. I was just on a live, and all of a sudden I see in the messages, I see Krasenstein, 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 Krasenstein. I'm like, what is this Krasenstein thing? And then I went out and I watched the video of the Krasenstein brothers, um, where they were talking about how you could highlight some of these redactions and just paste them into like a text document, like a Word doc or whatever, and that they could potentially be unredacted. I've not found those yet. I know they exist. But I've been like, every time I see a redaction, I go through and I highlight and I try to paste and see if I can find some of those. But the things that I have found in the redactions is it's just like they stopped trying. It's just at some point you can just see whoever is working on these documents is getting more and more tired as you go along. Like, there are redactions that aren't even because didn't they say that they forgot to pay their Adobe subscription fees, and so they like ran out of the option to do true redactions, and so you start to see like just like black lines through people's names, but you can see the letters above and below them. So like you can tell that. I mean, the people at the top really care about saving their own asses, but like the people working at the DOJ, these agents are all being paid like probably not very good salaries, and they don't have as much invested in making sure that all these major players are redacted and protected, and as much as the survivors, you know what I mean? So, and then the survivors are not being redacted. That's the thing. They're
Well, I want to
redacting
ask
these.
you about that.
Yeah, go for it.
No, so that's what you just said, right? So here they are furiously being told to redact Donald Trump's name,
Hmm.
and they messed up. And folks, if you think this is a conspiracy theory, a day after the file dump on December 19th, there
Hmm.
were about 15 to 16 redactions that people found because there's so many people who are invested in this. And they're like, wait. You, why'd you go back and a day later redact these names 15 times without telling us? We're onto it. And the names that they redacted were Donald Trump.
Right, and
And
the
that
picture,
really
right? The picture too. They
and
redacted.
the pictures that they found in the drawers,
Yeah,
where it's Donald Trump and Epstein, and the really disgusting story about Donald Trump apparently, what he did to a girl and her nipples, and then also another survivor who in a limo made the allegation that Trump raped her.
yeah,
So this was after the fact redaction because, as
right,
Ellie said, maybe these people are so lazy or incompetent, or maybe they just didn't care. Or
yeah.
when Allison put on her tinfoil hat, she's like, maybe they deliberately left it there
I
as
hope
a
that
cookie
one's
trail
true. I
because they're
really
like,
hope
this
that's
guy's
true.
a rapist, and we
Right.
want people to know that this
Yeah.
guy raped people. And then, but what they failed to redact is the identity of a survivor. Talk to us about that because that came out,
Well,
that was exposed about 2 days ago.
yeah, so like, and I found that. I found that just in my searching through. So like yesterday, one of the things that I found when I was going through these files is there was actually a school application for a 4th through 12th grade school, and it was in New York City. I think it was called the Professional Children's School or Professional School, something like that. But a girl was applying to go to this private school in New York City, and it said on the application that Jeffrey Epstein was going to be her benefactor to pay her tuition to go to school there. And I believe she's later come out as one of the survivors in this, but her name is redacted, but you can read it above the redaction. And so you have things like that. You have in the Ghislaine Maxwell proffer that she did with Todd Blanche, she says a name and then she goes, I mean Jane Doe. And they didn't redact it out of the audio, they didn't redact it out of the transcript. And at the time, like I was nobody from nowhere and I'm typing these transcripts up, and I just heard that in the middle of the night. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm hearing her say Jane Doe, and I was like, who do I tell? Who do I talk to that this person's name has just been exposed? And so I started talking to lawyers, and they said, unfortunately, when a Jane Doe is exposed, the onus is on them to come back and protect themselves and say that you did this. Like nobody else is required to go back in and make sure the DOJ takes that out. And so you have all these people who don't have the ability to pay for that kind of thing, and they don't have the ability to pay for like a legal team to go back in and say, hey, you did not redact my name, I didn't give you permission to say that. And now we're just seeing that everywhere, right? We're seeing you know I have someone very close to me who is a very big Trump believer, and they said, oh, thank goodness, you're writing this so objectively, you're not just going after Donald Trump. And I said, hold on. I said, I don't need to go after Donald Trump. He has been in there something like 600 times in just the files that we've received so far.
Not
And
the 5.2 million that the Justice
not the
Department just said.
5.2 million. And I said, and you also need to understand that we knew ahead of time before we got these files that they were going to be very left leaning, and they were going to take out the big players on the left first, because that's the only way he knows how to save himself right now, is to go after, and if they're, if those left leaning players are in there, then so be it. That's great. Take them out. But it's going to look very, very biased in these first few files until he has nothing left, and then you have to start picking apart the Trump team. But like, he's in there everywhere. There's no way to avoid it. And going back to some of these cases of these women who have accused Donald Trump of rape, way back in the day, before all this Epstein stuff came up that I knew, when I was not aware of it, like during the Me Too movement, right? I was involved in some of the Weinstein case. I transcribed a lot of the Weinstein interviews for Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey's book. So I was working with them on that. I was listening to a lot of interviews, and in that process, I was listening to people who had not come forward to accuse Donald Trump of raping and molesting them. And I still don't know if they've come forward. I don't recognize their names in some of the things that I have read. But there is an MO to how Donald Trump abused women that is like so hooky cutter across every single accuser who has come forward, that whenever I hear somebody who hasn't come forward, who's off the record, and they say, this is what happened to me, I go, yep, that's true, because that's the exact same method that he uses every single time. And this was, again, before people were talking about it. This was before he had just gotten to be president. So like there was not a lot of information, but like I now know how to tell if somebody is telling the truth, because they will say things that are somebody else said that I heard that are off the record, and they completely match up, and it's the same thing.
That's the thing. It's the pattern of behavior. It's the
Yeah.
consistency of the stories. It reminds me of like the MO that Bill Cosby had. One woman, two women, three women, four women, 10 women, 12 women, 15 women, 20 women, 25 women, 30 women. You're like, bro, right? It's like
We've
P.
got the
Diddy.
time, buddy.
Yeah, P. Diddy. And with Donald Trump, I
Hmm.
think it's important what you said. It's like the same MO, the same type of story, the same type of language again and again. Different women in different cities and different places talking about it. Employees, people who were
Right.
witnesses over years. And I think it's important for people to realize that the timeline, real quick, right? So Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were close. According to Jeffrey Epstein, on audio that Michael Wolff has him on, he said he was Donald Trump's closest friend. They partied for 10 years in the 90s. And the currency in the 90s for young men, and they weren't young, he was 50, was models. They used to chase models. And Michael Wolff said that the models were aged 14 to 19. And we have the videos of Epstein and Donald Trump partying. We have the photos of them partying. We have photos of them and Melania and Ghislaine Maxwell. I mean, it was out in the open, right? Uh, we also know that they chased models. Then they had their own modeling agencies. Then
Hmm.
Donald Trump had the Miss Trump USA and Miss Teen USA, right? And so, speaking about that article that came out about 2 weeks ago in the New York Times about how they used to chase women, I just want to read this real quick, and then I want your response to this because you've read a lot of the files and the latest batches. We'll talk about the batch that came out a
Yeah.
week ago because you did a comprehensive background on that. In January 1993, Mr. Trump held another party at Mar-a-Lago. This one to kick off a beauty pageant he was bringing to Atlantic City with two business partners, George Horani and Jill Harth. 24 or so potential contestants were flown in to meet Mr. Trump. The only other guest at the party, Mr. Horani told the Times in 2019, was
Jeffrey
Jeffrey
Epstein.
Epstein.
Yep.
During dinner that night, Miss Harth alleged in a 1997 lawsuit Mr. Trump groped her under the table, then cornered her in a bedroom, normally used by his daughter Ivanka, and, quote, forcibly kissed, fondled, and restrained her from leaving.
Yep.
Later, in the pre dawn hours, she alleged in the suit, Trump also sneaked into a bedroom being used by a 22-year-old contestant. Climbing into her bed, uninvited, he groped her too, according to the suit. Trump has denied the allegations by Miss Harth, who declined to comment. The pageant partnership later fizzled, leading Mr. Horani to separately sue Trump in 1995 for breach of contract. Ms. Hart said she withdrew her subsequent harassment lawsuit as a condition for settling the contract dispute. She went on to briefly date Mr. Trump. According to Mr. Epstein, he and Trump partied at his house too. In a 2015 email exchange with Landon Thomas Jr., then New York Times reporter, he recounted a moment when Mr. Trump was so focused on young women swimming in his pool that he walked into a glass door.
Yep.
Ellie, your response.
Yep, I have transcribed all of Landon Thomas's emails. That's an interesting guy in himself. Those are very wild emails. I heard about this party, gosh, right at the beginning. I think I it was in my first article I wrote about Epstein when I went through the timeline of him and Trump. Yeah, like this guy George was basically their party planner. He was the guy in charge of managing all these events, and he goes up to them, and they're going to do this sort of modeling expose thing, and he goes, okay, who's on the invite list? And he goes, oh, it's just Epstein. And he goes, and it really took this guy back. He goes, what do you mean it's just Epstein? He goes, yeah, it's just me and Epstein. And it's these two older men sitting in a room watching young girls model. And there was everything was, you'll hear this over and over and over again, but everything was under the guise of it's an audition. They weren't auditioning these girls for anything. And everybody and their mother in this group started their own modeling company. And so once they had their own modeling company, which really wasn't a modeling company, it was just like a front, then they could start to bring girls in and say, I have a modeling company. Look, here's my business card. And so that is very common. That's what Jean-Luc Brunel did. That's what Epstein did. That's what Trump did. Trump had the most connection to modeling because he was involved with the Miss Teen USA pageants and the Miss USA and the Miss Universe. Um, and if you go back, I think we mentioned this before, but if you go back, there's actually a letter for I think the Miss Teen Universe pageant where Epstein's inviting Vladimir Putin to come and begging him to come to the show, and you'll really love it, and please come. And I mean, it's just this was their, again, I've said this over and over again. This was their MO. This is and the idea that pushing against a wall, groping and forcefully kissing, that's Trump's thing. You will hear that over and over and over again. And I wrote an article that was
E. Jean Carroll.
E. Jane Carroll. I mean, it's like textbook. I wrote an article where I described all the women, I think there was 34 of them, who had accused Donald Trump of sexual misconduct. And it was the same thing every time. Pushed against a wall in a restaurant, in a bathroom, in a bedroom, groped, forcefully kissed. Like that's his thing that he thought that he was allowed to do, that was he was entitled to it. He's a billionaire guy. He's big deal in New York. And he thought that he was allowed to do that with anybody he wanted. And people would be there with their husbands or their partners or whatever, and he would still do that with them quietly in a bathroom somewhere.
This is a quote. I moved on her actually. She was down in Palm Beach. I moved on her, and I feel I admitted I didn't try
Yeah.
to F her. She was married. This is Access Hollywood tape, folks. This is what
Yep.
America voted for. This is what America. We all knew. Uh, and that's Bush. What was the guy's name? Billy Bush sitting there. Ha ha
Yeah.
ha.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh wow.
I know.
Grab him by the pee. You could do anything. That's Donald Trump. Grab him by the pee. You could do anything. And Bush goes, yeah, those legs. All I can see is the legs. It looks good. Nice legs. I mean, I'm just reading literally, this is a transcript, folks, from the video. And this country said, this is all out there.
Yeah.
When you're a star, right? When you're, what do you say? When you're a celebrity, they let you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the Access Hollywood video,
Right.
where he openly, this is him married to Melania, openly admitting that he wants to have sex with this woman. It's in 2005. This was right ahead of Trump's appearance on Day of Our Lives. And for 20 years, we've known this. And right before the 2016 election, we heard this. And America said, meh. And speaking about the Invisible Man, Prince Andrew, Virginia Giuffre, she was the first survivor who came out and publicly named Prince Andrew, much to her detriment, because Prince Andrew, with all his power and wealth, spent years defaming her, mocking her, calling her a liar. Right before her memoir was released, Prince Andrew got dethroned, stripped of his title, which, for those who don't follow British politics, is a huge deal, which means that Virginia Giuffre was actually telling the truth. And in addition to mentioning Prince Andrew, she also talked about a foreign prime minister who assaulted and raped her. I will say that Ehud Barak has had multiple sightings at the Epstein estate. She also mentioned some billionaires. And speaking about some powerful men who were openly doing this, what we found out from the latest batch from about, I think it was a week ago, and I wanted to ask you about this because I thought this was a big piece of news from there. The DOJ says that the day that they arrested Jeffrey Epstein in 2019, there was a list of 10 co-conspirators, and I'm like, interesting, 10 co-conspirators. Tell me more.
Oh, me too.
And all I found out was 3 names because 7 of the names were redacted. The 3 names that we do know about were Ghislaine Maxwell, who right now is in prison, but in a sweetheart prison. No one can explain why she got a sweetheart deal that no other person has ever gotten, and why she's in straight up Club Fed with a yoga and a dog. There was that French, what was that name? Jean-Luc, what was it?
Jean-Luc Brunel.
Jean-Luc Brunel, who also died in
Yes.
prison. And then the other one, Leslie Wexner, the billionaire, the former CEO of Victoria's Secret and Limited, who's just somehow, Ellie, gave Epstein millions upon millions of dollars, gave him a $70 million townhouse. Leslie Wexner, folks, is still alive. So the question for you, because you've read that latest batch and you've done 2 videos on them, talk to me about these 10 co-conspirators. Who are the other 7? Why are they redacted?
Who I
How
think.
how come the FBI hasn't done anything? And Leslie Wexner is literally right there,
Yeah.
folks. The John Luke is dead. Ghislaine Maxwell's angling for a pardon, but at least she's still in prison. Uh, at least give me Wexner, right, Ellie?
Right, right. My assumption is they are kind of these names that we've gone over and over and over. I'm sure Trump is on there.
Oh, you
Potentially,
think Trump is one of the seven?
I mean, he could be. I would think that Ehud Barak will be on there. Because he's an interesting character because they're letting him come through in the files, which makes me think that there's some bad blood between Netanyahu and Ehud Barak, and so Trump is, because he's buddy buddy with Netanyahu, he's letting Barak kind of fall. But he is definitely the prime minister, and the reason why I know he's the prime minister who abused Virginia Giuffre is when she accused Alan Dershowitz of sexually assaulting her, which he did. I just want to make that very clear that he did.
Mm,
He
mm.
he countersued her, and by countersuing her, he unsealed her deposition. And in her deposition, she says that Ehud Barak was sexually assaulting girls on the island and in the plains, and so we know that that is the prime minister who she's talking about. She did come
Wow.
across, Epstein did come across Tony Blair, but it was just so in passing, and it was very business related. And he doesn't have any he has like an affair on his record, but he doesn't have any sexual accusations. And so I know, and I also speak to survivors. I know that that's who it is. So that doesn't bother me to say that out loud. I don't even need to say allegedly. I feel very comfortable saying that. Um, you can think of people like Peter Mandelson. You can think of just the regulars. There are a lot of regulars. I kind of wonder about Woody Allen a little bit. He was
Mm,
around all the time. He
mm.
is in all the pictures. Every email he's sending to somebody, they're like, "I'm off to go eat dinner with Woody Allen." And he also has the reputation for the same activities with young girls. So it doesn't that wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't think people have really pointed him out, but he's there all the time. You have Prince Andrew, who is very clearly throughout the files. And then I think you would probably have a couple of these women who were assistants working for Epstein, some of the higher ups that worked for him for years and years, like a Sarah Kellen, like a Leslie Groff. You may have Bill Gates in there. It's I hope that is something that gets to be unredacted. Thank you, Omar. Woody Allen is hot trash. Thank you. I like that comment. Um,
He's so
I
gross. He's so gross.
He's absolutely gross, and he is another project that I got to work on years and years ago. And so in so doing, I heard a lot of off the record stuff. I read a lot of like his psych files and the police files that he was absolutely convicted in that case, and they pulled it because they wanted Dylan to have a normal life because she was 7 years old. So he most definitely did all the things that he was accused of doing. So it wouldn't surprise me that he was near all this. You have like Tom Pritzker was around a lot. You just have a lot of these people. Larry Summers was involved with a lot of this. Harvard as a whole was so entrenched in the Epstein scandal. I don't know. I feel like seven's a small number. I feel like it should be more.
I want to ask you about this because Julie Brown, who's done a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who's been doing fantastic work out of Miami covering this, I was on her Twitter and we saw one of the data dumps was this email. And there's this email apparently found on Steve Bannon's cell phone, a photo of Donald Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell. And she says this photo should be made public. And there's a lot of redaction. Talk to us about this email and this photo.
Yes. Bannon is somebody that I would very much like to talk to. I'm hoping that that is an option because he's somebody who likes to be in the news. No press is bad press for Steve Bannon. And so they found this email, or they found this photo in his phone, which means that they were searching his phone, which means that he is also probably a co-conspirator or involved on some level. And it's a picture of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Or no, Donald Trump and, say that again. My brain's Ghislaine
Epstein,
Maxwell. Ghislaine
Maxwell, and
Maxwell. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And if they're not showing it to us, because we have pictures of him and Ghislaine Maxwell, but they're kind of older. They're from the 90s. So if we have something on his phone that is within the last 10, 15 years, that changes the entire course of this story, because he has been adamant that he's not involved with any of these people since at least 2006, I think. And so if we have something that's after that, because again, Ghislaine Maxwell herself has said that she didn't hang out with Epstein after a certain point, and we've started to see that that's been chipped away at, and she's popping back into these emails, she's popping back into his life, she's popping back into business agreements, and all of a sudden she has $14 million in a bank account. So it wouldn't surprise me, and I would very much like to see that email, and I would very much like to reach out to Steve Bannon and ask him for that, and ask him for his interviews, and just see what he wants. He's a guy who is a slime ball and isn't above leaking information, and I would like to talk to him.
Do you mind if I bring Levin for a bit, Ellie?
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Lev, and it's up to you, Lev, if you want to jump in. I just saw you've been commenting for a while. Real quick, before I bring Levin, the latest batch from a week ago. You did 2 videos. I want to direct people to watch your videos and your posts on the Panic Writer Substack. Please subscribe to Ellie. But give us a Cliff's Notes from a week ago.
Hi, guys.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you. So the Cliff's Notes of what I did last night, it felt like last night was a little bit more heavy. Really interesting stuff in the second set of these files, and that included classified ads from Ghislaine Maxwell, where she was asking for light housekeeping, but only on school holidays, which, speaks volumes. We had that. Yeah, right. We had a discussion of her husband, which is brand new to a lot of us. His name's Scott Borgerson, and he worked in shipping. She married him in 2016. There's a whole backstory about where she was hiding when the FBI was looking for her after they arrested Epstein. She had created a new name. She had created a new job for herself. She had created a new LLC to buy up this 150-acre property in New Hampshire. That was very interesting because a lot of people didn't know she was married. And why would you become married to somebody after you'd had all these accusations by Virginia Giuffre? So what is that, a love relationship or is that a business relationship? And then the biggest, most astounding thing to me, because I'm all about receipts for these women. Like I have believed them from the beginning, but I know that they need receipts in order to get justice. We had these journal entries. And it was a 16-year-old girl. She was in the 11th grade. She says, my sister's in New York City. Her boss wants to fly me out. I'm very excited. He might pay for my college. She talks about going to Phantom of the Opera. And then she starts saying, like, it was weird. He kept touching my leg during the movie, and then he'd stop. And then she goes, but it's probably fine. Like, and it's so innocent, because you think, like, when I was 16, I would have written the same thing. Like, I would have been like, oh, it's probably me. It's probably not him. I'm being weird about it. And as she starts to talk about all this stuff, I thought, I think I know who these journal entries are. I think I know who's talking here. And so I assumed that it was Annie Farmer, but I didn't know that for sure. And so I sent the journal entries to Maria, her sister. And I said, have you seen these? Because I didn't think she'd seen the journal entries. I knew she'd seen the FBI file for her case, but I didn't think she'd seen these entries. And I said, is this Annie? And she said, yeah, that's Annie. And so I waited because I didn't want to say something because everybody was redacted out of it. And so I said, would Annie mind if I, showed these and said that that's who's speaking, because I know she's talked about it, but these are all redacted. And Annie Farmer, sorry, Vicky's asking who Annie Farmer is. So Maria and Annie Farmer are sisters. They were one of the first accusers of Jeffrey Epstein in the mid-90s. Annie was an artist. She worked for Epstein, but she was quite young. And then her sister was almost 10 years younger than her. So, and they were both sexually assaulted by him at various different times. And so she gave me permission. She talked with Annie. And so I have an article coming out at 5:00 today that will show those journal entries, that will talk about kind of the backstory, and how dangerous it was for them to come forward at the time, because they were the only ones
And this was 1996, and what we've also found out from the leak, folks, is the FBI was tipped off by Maria Farmer because she worked for Jeffrey Epstein, and she was lured by Glenn and Jeffrey and said, "Oh, you're very talented. We'll help you with your career." And then she found out that Jeffrey Epstein took a lot of interest in her younger sister, and she said that this man is into child porn. This man is a predator, and the first, if you will, file or what goes back, folks, 30 years, 1996, and the FBI did nothing. And
They
then
did
the
nothing.
Vandy,
They denied that she even had a file. For a long time, they said there is no file. You didn't come forward. You never said anything to us. And so she fought back against that for a very long time because she didn't report right away. She reported once she found out something happened to her sister. She didn't do it for herself. She did it for her little sister. And some of the misinformation that we've gotten over time, back to the Leslie Wexner thing, is when Maria was raped by Epstein and by also Ghislaine Maxwell, it wasn't at Epstein's house on Wexner's property. It was in Wexner's house. And according to Maria, everybody was aware of what's going on. She said there were guard dogs, and she said there were men with sniper rifles, and it wasn't to block people from coming in, it was to block people from leaving the house. And so that is something that we didn't have before. We were always told that she was raped in Epstein's house. He had a house on Wexner's property. It actually occurred in Wexner's house.
And Wexner is still alive, the CEO of Limited and Victoria's Secret, the billionaire. To this day, we don't know why he gave Epstein hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't know why he gifted Epstein a $70 million townhouse where girls were raped. Still alive, folks. And one of the 10 co-conspirators that the FBI was apparently interested in the day that they arrested Jeffrey Epstein in 2019. It was him, Jean-Luc, who was then later found dead or murdered, and then also Glenn Maxwell, who has a sweetheart deal. It seems, Lev, that everyone is in the loop. Great shirt. But before I get to you, I want to read this. Joshua Reed Equal found this and posted this photo from someone on Reddit. The Epstein timeline perfectly summarized. I'm just going to read it. Trump said he would release the files if he won. Bondi said they were on her desk. Then the files didn't exist. They were a hoax. Obama wrote the files. They're a hoax. Obama is in the files. The files are a hoax. Clinton and Biden wrote the files. Joe Biden is in the files. The files are a hoax. Charlie Kirk, who once the files released, got shot, and suddenly the files weren't in the news at all for 3 weeks, and then the government shut down like right after that. So, oops, the files couldn't be released. The files are a hoax. Anyway, the Democrats wrote the files, which are a hoax, to besmirch Trump's name, but all the files only contain Democrats. The files are real and they mention Trump, but Trump and only Trump is innocent, but every other person mentioned is guilty. Let.
Sounds about right.
I mean, I don't even know what to say after something like that. I love you, man. Yeah, I mean, listen, the files are definitely not a hoax. The files are definitely real. And this is exactly like we've been saying for the past 6 months, or that this is his kryptonite, Achilles Cankle, whatever you want to call it.
You cut up a little bit, but you cut up a little bit. I think your Wi-Fi is a little funky, but I think what you said is what we've been saying since the summer is that the Epstein files are going to be Trump's Achilles Cankle, and it's the one thing that he can't escape from.
Exactly. And I first of all, I want to just say I am honored to be here with Ellie. I love her. She is incredible. Everybody better make sure to subscribe to her because the work she's doing, I mean, this is true independent journalism.
That's right.
Waj, Ellie, I mean, this, end of the year type of a rant, but I just want to let you guys know I wore this shirt specially today I'm doing one later because this was gifted to me during the first trial. When I was on trial during Trump's first administration, I went on Rachel Maddow, and she said to me, "Did they know?" I said, "You know what? Everyone was in the loop." And somebody sent me this shirt, and I've held it ever since. And I think it's right now. I'm gonna wear it every day not every day, but every time I talk about the Epstein files because everyone was in the loop. Mm-hmm. They were all in the loop, and that's what we're seeing day, what Ellie is and you are uncovering is that it wasn't just Donald Trump. There was a lot of people. But the one thing that we're not seeing is any names. The names are being whited out. I mean, blacked out. The names we have not, with all of you see, the crazy part, they are so, like, I call them the bad news bears. They're such bumbling fools. Like Ellie was saying, they were tired of whiting it. I mean, blacking it out. All they're doing is the more they keep putting out, actually on Donald Trump. The more they're covering up more names, the more the only name that keeps coming out, the more name we keep hearing, the more the bigger relationship is Donald Trump. But the one thing I just want to say, and we keep saying is, look, we should all already understand Donald Trump is in the files. Donald Trump was part of that whole Epstein cabal. Donald Trump was we need to know everybody else that was involved there. We need to release who else is he covering up for? Who are those other friends that he said to Marjorie Taylor Greene that are going to, who are those powerful people there? Because, yeah, we keep seeing the same names, Lex Wexner and Clinton and Trump, and it's the same names. We need to see who are, because we know that there was thousands, I mean hundreds, there was lots of powerful men. We know the Ehud Baraks. We know the Prince Andrews. Enough. Let's get to the gritty. That's what I hope 2026 will give us, where people like Ellie, and like we were talking about another podcast with Zev and Ellie, that, the one thing they underestimate is the power of the people. By putting out all of these, Ellie said it best then. She said, by putting out all of these files, they didn't realize how many people out there are now digging through them. If they had to go hire spend $1 million on hiring all these extra FBI agents to scrub them, think about how many hundreds of millions of people right now around the world are digging through them and looking through. So they are just idiots. So, I don't know what else to say, but thank God for guys like you and independent journalism that we could uncover all this shit, because the media right now doesn't talk about any of this.
Every accusation is a confession. And I think what you're witnessing with Epstein, and especially what you're witnessing with the attack on Somalis, the horrible racist attack that Donald Trump said today, I don't want to repeat it. And this is right before the new year. That's what the president of the United States says against Somali people and the country of Somalia. Fraud. But what ends up happening is it boomerangs, because it reveals the fraud that Donald Trump is guilty of, number one, and all the fraudsters that he has pardoned, right? And when it comes to the Epstein files, the more they try to cover it up, and I've used the word cover up, and I think it is a cover up. I think it's the biggest cover up in modern history. And I'll quickly make my case for that. In the spring, we found out from the Wall Street Journal that Pam Bondi told Donald Trump that he's in the files. They promised their base they would release the Epstein files, because Donald Trump said that he and he alone can reveal the deep state, this deep state of liberal, leftist, homosexual, devil worshipping, child raping leftists. I'm not making this up, which is part and parcel of the QAnon conspiracy that brought also Marjorie Taylor Greene into power, right? So the if you will, the Rosetta Stone of the QAnon conspiracy was the Epstein files. So they promised their base they would release the Epstein files. Then they got in power. Dan Bongino saw the Epstein files. Kash Patel saw the Epstein files. Pam Bondi saw the Epstein files. Susie Wiles saw the Epstein files. And they realized, oh, their king and daddy, Donald Trump, is all over it. The Wall Street Journal reported that Pam Bondi told them in the spring Donald Trump openly lied to the press and American public when he asked whether or not he was in it. We know that they got thousands of FBI agents to scrub his name. They use the same open Excel sheet, which means that many of them probably copy pasted some of this information, and there's going to be leaks. What we know is since the summer, they said, okay, nothing there. It's all good. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino came out on Fox, white, ashen-faced. Remember that? With their butt like squeezed tight. Dan Bongino looked like he was terrified, because Dan Bongino got in power by giving this red meat to his base. And then after that, if you notice, Lev's been on this. He goes, watch the Dan Bongino space. He's gone quiet as a mouse fart. And he has. And now Dan Bongino, the day before the dump, folks, on Thursday, the day before the dump, he just casually announced, oh yeah, I'm leaving in early January, right? Pam Bondi said that she had the files on her desk. I was referring to someone else. They did the photo op where they brought Cernovich and all these other people with the big binders, and everyone was like, open up the binders. And so they've radicalized their own base, folks, and they cannot release the files because Donald Trump is all up in the files. But legally, the judge has said the DOJ, as of today, 1:49 p.m., December 31st, can release the files. They could literally just say, hey, folks, end of the year treat, all the files. But the reason why they haven't, and The reason why it's being done piecemeal and the reason why it's being redacted. And furthermore, Lev, I always try to bring this up. I brought this up with Ellie, but even the Glenn Maxwell, even if, forget everything I just said, if the only piece of evidence, Ellie and Lev, was Glenn Maxwell, where she is right now and why, wouldn't that be enough? Wouldn't that be enough in any other administration, Ellie, to be like, these people are covering it up? Because no one has explained why she got transferred, right, Lev? Like that alone, to me, is the biggest scandal.
Well, the crazy part is, Waj, Ellie, yesterday, the day before yesterday, a couple days ago, I had an incredible a guest on my show, Eric Fungeli from the Boom Group. He represents a lot of the Epstein victims. And we were talking, and one of the questions I asked him, because I know Todd Blanche very well, I said, have you gotten a chance to speak to Todd Blanche? Because Maxwell spoke to Todd Blanche. I mean, in this whole period, have you got a chance to speak to Todd Blanche? And he said, no, Lev. He said, nobody responds to us. The DOJ completely, So one of the things in 2026, we're going to make it a mission, as we are going to confront people like Todd Blanche, Trump, and everybody else to make sure that they have to acknowledge that that it's not a hoax, that this is reality, and that's one of the things that is a part of the movement we're building. Enough is enough, because enough with the bullshit, enough with the lies, enough with the giving us these kind. It's time to pay the piper. Time for accountability, and these people, right now with those dumps. Because remember, the other thing we're not even talking about, we're talking about all the redactions. We're talking about all of these things. The one thing that also Thomas Massey mentioned, Rokana mentioned, I've reported on it, we've spoken about is the things that they have deleted. Just think about it, the things that, and it doesn't take a lot. Some people sit there and say, how can you delete? There's so many, there's so many ways. It's 2025, folks. A piece of paper, sometimes that one email that links, that gives that whole link, and Ellie will tell you, and Waj will tell you, as investigative reporters, it doesn't take a lot to change the narrative or to delete something. So there's a lot going on. I just want to say the other thing. Where do they hide 1 million files, or 1 million? How do they just find in the Southern District? I mean, this is like beyond. I don't even know how to say it. Can somebody explain to me how they just
5.2
found
million.
5.2
million.
How do you just find them? Were they under the cover somewhere, under the rug? Did somebody leave them in their house? And was it in Joe Biden's garage? Was it in Trump's bathroom? Where did they find these files? How did they come up? Can somebody tell me?
If you look in this latest drop, I think it was in folder 2. There's an email during this trial during 2020 where they say, we have 1 million files to go through, and it's highlighted. So like they've known about these millions of files since at least 2020. So the idea that they just all of a sudden found them is, it's hogwash. So
I mean, I think you all agree with me, and if you don't, please jump in. That this is the biggest modern cover-up that we've seen, and it's a cover-up that entails not just some of the most powerful and wealthy men in the world, but also several countries: United States, Israel, Russia. And also financial institutions. And following the money will give us a lot of data points and entry points into finding the people who were involved in covering this up, or in being complicit in the sex trafficking and raping of girls. And with the sentiment that is bubbling throughout the world, the 1% versus the 99%, the rich versus the rest of us, top versus bottom, I think the Epstein story is exactly that, the story of power that is never confronted, never challenged, and never held to account for its sins and abuses, especially against girls. And I think this is why you will see the entire system bend over backward to protect itself, which is why a month ago, David Brooks wrote that really oddly timed near NYT piece. I'm over the Epstein Files. Like, that's a weird thing to say, bro, even though 80% of Americans want the release of the Epstein Files. And then, Ellie, can you tell him why he said that? What was revealed?
Well, so what I've found is that back in the day when Epstein was working at the Dalton School and unqualified, working at a $70,000 a year private school, and he was offered this job to become a financier at Bear Stearns with also no qualifications. At the same time, Punch Sulzberger, who was the editor and CEO of the New York Times, also offered him a job. Like, this guy who's completely unqualified, nobody from nowhere, is being offered all the top jobs in New York City. And so the Sulzbergers still own the New York Times. They still run the New York Times. It's his grandson who's now in charge. And so this is also was my issue with them bringing Ehud Barak on to speak for the Deal Book Summit. Like, they're still intertwined with all of these things. And I found it very interesting. I thought that article was completely stupid and, obviously a bad idea. But I find it very interesting that now they're writing all these articles that are like, oh, we're very wise in this Epstein story. We have all this information. And it's like, you are the New York Times. You've had this information and you've made it very clear on which side of the line you stand. Saving your butt at the last minute isn't going to cut it. People know now that you haven't stood up for these victims. You haven't stood up for this, the storyline. You've waffled. And so I think it's very much connected to that first offer for Epstein in, I think it was 1976, I want to say.
I think these institutions are backtracking. New York Times all of a sudden is uncovering the money trail. Right. New York Times is all of a sudden doing an expose on Leon Black. New York Times is all of a sudden interviewing all these witnesses. Yep. Vanity Fair all of a sudden is doing an expose on the Trump administration, right? Vanity Fair also allegedly spiked Vicky Ward's piece where she mentioned the Farmer Sisters. This was 24 years ago on Epstein. Yeah. These institutions are all complicit, folks. That's what I'm saying. It's the world's most wealthy and powerful. And I'm not even a conspiracy theorist, but this has straight up made me like put the tinfoil hat on my head because I'm like,
it's right in front of us. I mean, we have the information. You can't. The only way you can be conspiratorial is to like ignore it all, right? It's black and white. We have it in front of us. We have the people, we have the money, we have the court records, we have the articles, we have the emails for people saying they did the things because they didn't think anybody was going to read it. Like, you can only be a conspiracy theorist if you choose to ignore all of this stuff and say that everybody was good.
And that's what Donald Trump wants you to do. Ignore the evidence of your eyes and ears. And finally, I just think there's too much, Lev and Ellie. I think without full transparency, people are going to have questions. And that's why I think they're stuck. Because if they keep giving us piecemeal, it just begs and invites more and more and more questions. And if they do reveal everything, they're toast. Because I think what it will reveal is an entire conspiratorial cabal of powerful men and powerful institutions that were completely fine with the world's worst people raping and trafficking girls. And I don't think we'll rest until there's full transparency. And I hope the people just keep the pressure on. And I know for a fact that what Donald Trump is doing right now, in addition to trying to get his own agenda, oil, wealth, money, power, yada, 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 this is distraction. He cannot distract from the Epstein Files, folks. He cannot distract from the economy. No matter how much he's tried to focus on the Somali fraud, it's now blowing up in his face as of today. This guy, Nick Shirley, is being exposed as a fraud by both CNN and CBS and Fox. It's putting turning the spotlight around on Donald Trump's own fraud, pardoning of fraudsters, and every single time they try to distract from the Epstein Files, drip, 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 folks. Right. More and more leaks, and now we just found out 5.2 million files still have to be released. It's amazing. I'm going to be on with Allison in 2 to 3 minutes, but before I leave, it's the end of the year. Inshallah, may the next year bring better news and better stories for everyone. For those of you who had a tough year, the story is still being written. The page will turn, and inshallah, there can always be a plot twist. And for the rest of us who were lucky this year, may we use our privilege and our life to do good, uplift others, speak the truth. Yes, we're going against the most powerful, the most wealthy, the most corrupt, but we have the numbers. And I always feel like, that story, that old school, Old Testament Quranic story, it was Moses versus the Pharaoh and his magicians. Moses threw down his staff. The Pharaoh and his magicians threw down their staffs, and Moses' staff gobbled them up thanks to the truth. I always like that story. So Ellie, shamelessly promote yourself before we head out.
Sure. You can find me on The Panicked Writer on Substack. Again, I'm going to be releasing an article tonight at 5:00 that exposes a few new things that I think are not probably public knowledge. You can also find a video that I posted last night that really, really breaks down just this section of the files. I have to do them one at a time because there are so many things in these files. And so if you can handle an hour-long video, I go over everything that I found, some of the backstory, some of the private information that I've learned from survivors and how it all links up. And all on The Panicked Writer.
Okay, Lev, your turn.
I just want to say this.
Okay.
With everything you just heard today, the one most important thing you need to take out of this coming into 2026, the new year, is the reason why these survivors, the reason why these powerful institutions have because they're still there. These are still some of the most powerful people. And the only way we're going to expose them, the only way we're going to be able to get the truth out is by what we have here. It's independent journalism, folks. And I don't say that lightly. And that's why people like Ellie, people like Waj, my son Aaron, the Midas, there's others out there. You need to go out there because the media is corrupted. They are, because it's a lot of powerful people that are involved, and the chain goes all the way up. So for what I'd like to say is wish everybody a happy, healthy new year. It's been a tough year. Next year, together, the one thing I could say is unity. Together, we're going to take back our democracy. But the number one thing is support your independent journalism, because that's all we have to save our democracy between truth and the lies that they try to deceive us, because the truth doesn't have right, left, blue, red, religion. The truth is the truth, folks. And that's what we need right now to save our democracy.
Folks, I'm going to be on with Allison in a couple of minutes. We're going to talk about America first or America last. We're going to talk a little bit about the Epstein Files. We're going to talk about the Trump administration trying to distract from its numerous failures and crimes by attacking Somalis. We're going to talk about what we found out about the strikes in Venezuela, the unlawful detentions and kidnapping of brown folks, and specifically how Donald Trump is betraying his own America First agenda and actually screwing over his own base. That'll be up in 2 minutes, but I'm trying to get better at this, folks. I'm trying to get better at promoting myself. My father's very proud of me. So I'll try. Because you're supposed to say it. This is what you're supposed to do. We're really bad at this. But this, if I was good at this and I didn't cringe, I'd say this right when I started talking to Ellie. Hey, everyone. Welcome to The Left Hook. Be sure to like and subscribe. The Left Hook has no paywalls. Become a free subscriber. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. But I just can't. My face contorts. But today is the last day of this terrible holiday capitalist special that I have, folks. I just put it in right now. It's called thelefthook.substack.com/discount. Everything is free. We all depend on the kindness of strangers. We're all like the modern day Blanche Dubois, but less melodramatic. If you want to help all of us who are independent, just become a paid subscriber. It's $5 a month. But with this discount, which will last till midnight tonight, it's 25% off. So it's $3. I think $3.50 a month and $38 a year. So if you can become a paid subscriber, please become a paid subscriber to Ellie, to me, The Left Hook, to Lev. If not, just become a free subscriber. If you can't even do that, just share the good news. If you like some of these articles and conversations, just share it, because we try to go more in depth in these stories that unfortunately the corporate media should be doing, but for a variety of reasons they don't do. We try to be blunt. We try to be honest. We call it out, whether it's Democrats or Republicans or liberals or progressives. It doesn't matter. And we try to be consistent, and we try to be, at the very least, entertaining. Folks, if you can, subscribe, like, share this video, be kind to each other, enjoy your New Year's celebration, be safe, be healthy, be happy, and please, oh please, don't be a fascist. Ellie, Lev, Happy New Year.
Love you guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Ellie.